I think we're back. Oh my gosh. What a disaster. All right. We're talking about red flag, I think.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live now.
Well,
back.
we're
back.
back.
We're back.
I guess I got to start paying my producer more. Because, yeah, he is a boomer of all boomers. But I love him. He's
On
a great
scale
guy.
of 0 to Nick, how much of a boomer?
I'm not even going there. That's between you and Nick. And what is going on with my screen?
What's going on with your screen? A browser window?
Yes. Wait. There we go. Ooh. Okay. Was about to say audio is better than.
More boomers. More boomers. All right. Red flag laws. We're going on a spiel about them.
Yeah. So I mean, with the red flag law, essentially what they're pushing right now is that anyone can report any other person who is known to have weapons and report them as being mentally unstable, right? And the local the local police department then has the authority, but also responsibility to come and confiscate those weapons prior to any trial or anything being done, right? Mm-hmm. Serious overreach of our Second Amendment rights, as far as I'm concerned. And according are enacting laws similar to this. I believe, was it Maryland or Massachusetts that
one of those top eastern states.
A man was killed as a result of it. They came to retrieve his weapons and he fought back. While I don't condone people fighting with the authorities, I get it. I get it. I get the feeling like you were violated if someone were to come and take your weapons because of a complaint made by someone that they cannot name anonymously. You understand what I'm saying? Like I don't
escape first, figure out what's going on later.
Right. I mean, it seems like it goes completely against due process laws that we have in place in this country. So. I mean, what's your take on that? I mean, how do you?
Well, I think it takes. Oh, now my audio is all screwed up again. Fantastic. Let's get rid of these quick. Maybe it'll be better. Hello? There we go. That's a little bit. Okay. All right. That's a little bit better. Okay. So, my problem with red flag laws is, like you were saying, it's taking the guns out of the situation before anything can be found on an accusation. Nick, from what he's talked about due process, it kind of sounds like it is due process because they're going through a process, right? They're not just coming and taking them just because someone wants to. There's a form that's filled out, a report that's made, and decisions that are made by the police chief or sheriff's office. So I don't like it because it doesn't let you defend yourself with words before something bad happens to you. And like that gentleman up in the Northeast who was killed in the raid, for the lack of a better term, to come take his guns. The police are coming to take your guns. So they're on high alert. And they any wrong action you do is going to result in someone probably dying or seriously maimed at the worst. So in my humble opinion, it makes things dangerous for people.
Sure.
As seen in the Northeastern, whatever state it is, wherever that happened, it just makes things more dangerous for everyone. Instead of come to court on Tuesday, make your case as to why you shouldn't lose your guns. Which, again, everyone should have guns, should be able to have guns, but yeah, anyway. I don't like that it might be coming to Minnesota. I kind of doubt it will because the Senate is GOP. Then again, they also passed that hands-free bill too. So
Yeah, so I know a lot of
who
states
knows,
have
who knows what they're gonna do?
a lot of states have adopted, similar legislation. And if you guys are unaware of this, I'm sure some of you live in states that have such legislation. Essentially, you are not allowed to hold a cell phone in your hand while driving, not allowed to use a cell phone while driving. You must use some sort of hands-free device. I get it. I totally understand the rationale behind it, but I don't know. I find myself anytime that the government has more right and or is warranted to come in and pull more liberties away and penalize people, I immediately am against the idea and have to be won over. I'm immediately against this idea, and I would have to be won over. Have you been won over yet, then, Soder?
For the hands-free?
The hands-free thing.
No. I dislike the idea immensely. I drive older vehicles that don't have the best audio setups.
Right.
Right? So I can't use like the car's audio for my phone call. Like for instance, my family vehicle doesn't have an aux jack in it. So to get something to come through the car speakers, we would need to use one of those FM transmitters in the vehicle. So we would have to have it set to a station that isn't locally used. And,
Sure.
That changes everywhere you go.
Right.
So that's something that if you're on a long trip, you got to constantly be checking.
Sure.
Especially if you're on a phone call and it's starting to cut out. What are you going to do now?
Right.
Like, are you the whole concept of being to cut down on distracted driving? Well, now I'm trying to change the audio station of my hands-free device so I can actually hear the call. Right?
I don't know about your kids, but your kids like quiet as church mice whenever your phone rings?
No.
Because mine aren't.
So yeah, I can't use the built-in speakers of the car. So that cuts down on what I can use, right?
Sure.
On top of which, my wife is hard of hearing, and she has hearing aids. So we can't use like a Bluetooth headset for her, because then she'd have to take out her hearing aid. And that's not a great idea.
Sure.
Because then she can't hear the kids, or she can't hear the environment.
Sure.
That's around. So, and if she were to switch it, more distracted driving. Doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a lot easier if you're going to be on the phone call for 30 seconds, just hold it up to your ear, than have to fiddle with all this stuff.
Right. It's funny because I see police officers driving down the road all the time.
No, but see, their shiny badges give you superpowers.
Oh,
you got to remember.
All right.
So they are able to be on the phone playing Tetris while driving because their badges give them that superpower. They can't be
totally
distracted.
Forgot about that.
Yeah.
Okay. Golly. All right. Well, I stand corrected. Yeah. So the badge gives you the superpower. So yeah.
Yep. I heard that from my cousin who was a cop.
Okay.
So it's got to be true.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's on Facebook someplace.
Probably.
And if it's on Facebook, yeah, absolutely, it has to be true. So, well, cool. So, Bazik is asking. He says, "Does the law require psychological evaluation for confiscation? Because if not, people can just make up accusations, and suddenly you can't have a gun." And that is where the issue lies for me, because the confiscation, there is a psychological evaluation, Bazik, but the confiscation takes place prior to the psychological evaluation. So the first step is to remove the guns from the premises. The next step is to set up psychological evaluations. My issue with that is that if you are allowed to get away with those types of gross.
Turn down the game.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. I'm having some technical issues.
There you go.
If you are allowed to get away with those types of gross violations of people's constitutional rights, where does it end? You know, at what point do you decide, okay, now we're not going to, we will only go so far?
Yeah, and it kind of segues back to anyone should be able to own a gun.
See, okay, now I got a lot of calls and or emails and or a lot of people reached out to me about that, and people were really confused by your last statements. They're like, so Soder doesn't really believe that everybody should have a gun. And I said, yeah, he believes that everyone should have a gun. So even like criminals, yeah.
As long as you're not in jail.
As long as they are not in
jail. You should be able
jail,
to have a gun.
he believes that they should be allowed to carry and to own weapons. I agree with you on most things, but on that one, I have to get off.
What?
I have to get off the bandwagon on that one. I'm no longer a Soder fan on that one.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I can't go along with you on that one. I feel like if a person is shown themselves time and time again to be a head case, okay, for lack of a better term, and has had domestic violence issues in the past, the idea that they should be allowed to own a weapon, I can't get with that one.
But they're allowed to own a lot of other things. Not just knives, generally speaking. Not in all cases. I know some states have, you can't even carry a knife if you're a felon. Gasoline, kitchen knives are usually allowed.
But would you rather run into someone on a dark street with a kitchen knife or with a 9mm pistol?
Neither.
If
someone's attacking me, I don't want.
Would you rather be attacked by a gun, or with a gun, or with a knife or a baseball bat?
Problem is when you start limiting people to what they can carry, it affects
limiting
everyone.
No one's going to limit you to what you can protect yourself with.
Well, they do now. What are you talking about? I can't be walking up and down the street with an AR-15.
Yeah, Sonia says it depends on their aim. Touche.
That could be part of it. But like one of the common phrases you hear from conservatives or conservative people when it comes to gun laws that they don't like is criminals don't obey the law, right? So when you pass a law saying you can't carry at a certain time or after having a certain number of drinks, it stops the people who don't mean harm from carrying or procuring weapons. It doesn't stop the guy who's intent on, or who has malice and malicious intent from doing anything bad.
Well, we're talking about a totally different situation at this point, though, right? I mean, you're talking about a lawful, because I have a carry permit, so the state says that I have the right to carry in 40 some odd different states a weapon on me, right? But there are limits. Once a blood alcohol level of, I forget, but essentially if I'm drinking, I'm not going to carry. It's essentially what it boils down to, so I don't take a chance. But my concern with that is I agree with you on that point. Like, just because a person had a drink doesn't mean that they are going to go out and act recklessly with a weapon. So I understand that. But that's an entirely different scenario than saying, I know that you just got out of jail 2 days ago for gang-related violence, but now that you have served your time, we're going to allow you to pick up your 9mm on the way out.
Well, my question to that would be is, are you dangerous? Or
Am I
like,
dangerous?
okay, so is the person who's coming out of jail dangerous?
I'd say that yes,
So why are they out of prison? Why are they?
because they served their
So they paid for their crime.
they paid for their crime. Yes.
Okay, so why can't they have their rights back? Like or why if they've paid the penalty for their crimes, they can't get their rights back?
So your argument is kind of an argument of like a double jeopardy type situation. So
No, I'd say it comes more from if you let someone out of prison, like
right.
you said,
So
you're in
usually,
effect saying, okay, you're not dangerous. We don't need to lock you up anymore,
okay.
right? So why are you telling people that they're dangerous?
Because they might be.
I might be. Know that.
And if you ever,
I used to punch my brother all the time.
so if you ever prove that you are, then at that point, absolutely, they should. I feel like
so
you should.
Prison can't reform people then?
Now that's an entirely different discussion. Like I would venture to say that recidivism, right? Rates of recidivism.
It's a big word. I don't understand.
Okay, so essentially, the amount of people who come out of prison who end up going back to prison is off the charts, right? Repeat offenses are high. So to say, I don't think that the judicial system is doing a good job of reforming people. I mean, is that really the purpose? Is the purpose reformation, or is the purpose getting them out of our way for a period of time?
Well, either way, it's just to get them out of the way for a while. You're saying that you were dangerous for a period of time. You're too dangerous to be let out, right? But here you go back into society. Do what you will. You have freedom of movement now. If it's the other way, if prison is supposed to reform, then you should be getting your rights back when you come out. At least that's how I look at it, is if you're so dangerous to people, you need to be locked up. If your freedom of movement needs to be restricted, then okay. But once you're out, are we saying you're still dangerous? Well, then why don't we lock you back up again?
Well, I do understand.
There's other factors,
and I do understand that. But now, I mean, you have a kid who is gang affiliated. He is caught, in a fist fight. I mean, he's shown a certain tendency towards violence, right? You put this kid in jail, which in many cases I've seen that go the other way, where kids come out with bigger problems than what they went in with, right? So you put this kid in jail. I mean, he goes before a parole board to get out. I mean, at what point do you say, no, we're not going to let this kid out? I mean, and can you do that? I mean, that's violating rights as well, is it not? I mean, to keep a kid locked up or keep a person locked up until the parole board or until a jury of his peers are convinced that he's no longer a threat.
Wasn't that the whole idea behind prison term?
I mean, we were sold the idea that prison sentences were supposed to be for the reformation of people, to bring people to reform them. I mean, but I think that anyone who was looking at this objectively would say, yeah, nah, people aren't necessarily being reformed. I don't see how you could look at that and say that they are.
Well, yeah, I would agree with that.
So who gets to decide whether or not a person is reformed or not?
Yeah.
Enough so much that you're going to give that guy access to a weapon.
Well, if we can't decide, then again, should default. I would say default should be anyone can own guns. Because you can't know and you can't decide.
It's an interesting. I mean, Sonia brings up an interesting point. She says with prisons, so many prisons being privately owned, do you really think prisons are interested in the inmates being reformed? What is their agenda?
Money.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want to necessarily heal people of their ailment that brings them to you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying this is no conspiracy theory show, so I'm not saying that this is, but I mean, it does make you wonder what is the true incentive, right? I mean,
It's almost like if people keenly carried guns and dealt with the problem when it happened, wouldn't have to have such large prisons and
well, okay, so here we go. So that kind of leads us into the segue for our next topic, right? Because right now we're dealing with an issue in the state of Minnesota that our House just voted to allow legal immigrants or legal aliens to have driver's license.
It's undocumented workers.
It's legal aliens, right? I'm over this whole being PC thing, right? So, and I'm black, so I don't have to be.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you don't have to be.
Okay.
You don't have to be.
So the issue with it is that they're going to allow these people who are legal, who are here illegally, to get driver's licenses so they can drive on the roads legally, right? So my concern with this, well, before I talk about my point, so what is your standpoint?
Oh, you're gonna put me on the spot.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. Where do you fall on that?
I'm probably, you could say, on the fence about it. I think arguments for and against are compelling.
All right, Ross Perot. So where do you stand on it?
Okay, so the argument that they shouldn't have them is it's rewarding illegal behavior and not helping ICE or Department of Homeland Security, right? Like, it's helping them get away with their current life of crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the state abetting that, the state essentially abetting a federal crime. We've seen something like that before. Back in the 1800s, just before, in the decades prior to the 1860s.
Moving on.
So it didn't turn out well, and kind of funnily enough, it was also kind of the same states. So, well, I mean, there was a war and a lot of people died.
Yeah.
So please don't take that out of context of me saying that we should still have slaves based on race. No. Just saying that a war happened and a lot of people died because the North decided they wanted to ignore their constitutional duties to return slaves to their owners. That's all. Okay. That's one of the reasons the South seceded and went their own way, and then the North was like, no, we want our bases back, or we want to keep these bases we have, and the South was like, no, that's our property, you need to return it to us. And then we had 4-year-long civil war. So anyway, back to the point. we're just gonna keep going back in time.
Okay.
It's not gonna be good. So anyway, so it's
So are you
faction.
Are you justifying the Civil War?
No, I'm not.
Are you justifying slavery?
No.
Okay.
Why would I do that?
I don't know.
You wouldn't be my friend if we still had slavery. You'd be the help.
I don't think so.
Is your family that recent?
Yeah, my family's
Okay,
pretty
all right.
recent.
Never mind then.
Yeah, my family's pretty recent.
Here I go prejudicing.
Yeah, just assuming.
I'm assuming.
You're assuming. Yeah.
Assuming. All right.
Okay.
So I'll call it the faction of the GOP that was against the bill. They see it as an encroachment or another step towards just letting anyone.
Okay.
And I would say the biggest reason they don't like that is, well, because of our immigration laws. But another part of it is the welfare state, and about anyone can come here and live off the government purse, right?
Well, okay, so that's the big argument because people are
Or at
always
least whether or not that's true,
okay.
it's what they believe.
Okay,
And
so let's put this to bed right now. I'm getting real sick of people calling me, telling me that's not true. You're putting out false information. You cannot get welfare if you're not here legally. Bull. You tell me what school district is going to turn away kids from going to school in their school district because they're undocumented. I'll wait.
I don't think I've ever heard of that happening.
Very good. How many hospitals are going to turn away people with a broken leg because they show up and they don't have papers?
Well, until we had the ACA, all of
if it were an emergency, that hospital was required to stabilize that person. If it were an emergency, right? Who ate the bill?
Hospital.
The hospital ate the bill, but that was
possibly
written off, and then that was right. So the government has no money. So, well, as of today, they're rolling.
Yeah, today they're rolling it. Well, after every quarter, but
tax day. Okay, so the problem is that people are able to benefit from the welfare system or the social welfare system in this country, right? So let's put that to bed. Now, whether or not they can qualify for all programs, I'm not saying that, but there are a lot of programs they are able to qualify for. And one of the biggest programs, well, two of the biggest programs being number one, healthcare, and number two, education.
And if I remember the town hall I was at, they said 48% of the Minnesota budget was those two items.
There you go. So 48% of our state budget falls under those two items. So with that being said, why would we not protect it? So
yeah, and that's that faction of the GOP's point is that if we're letting if these things are available to anyone who's here,
not all
we need
GOP,
to be.
But.
Well, no, that's because it's the faction that faction of the GOP.
Okay.
Saying if these things are generally available to anyone who is currently residing within the borders,
sure,
then we need to be restrictive about who can come here because they might not be here legally, or they might be fugitives from their home states, whatever. We need to have strong borders to protect this thing.
Well, I was completely and utterly against the bill immediately, especially as it was originally written. And essentially the way the bill was originally written was that it would penalize police officers
That wasn't him.
Police officers for sharing information with ICE, right? So if a police officer saw a gun in the floor of the car and took that person in and reported that person to ICE as being here illegally and having a weapon against the law and reported that person, the police officer could be subject to disciplinary action as a result of it. Well, I mean, come on now. I mean, it's hard enough working as a police officer without having your hands tied behind your back. Do I believe that all police officers are great people? No, but you won't find any profession where everyone who does is a good person, right? Not even all pastors are good people, right?
Or insurance salesmen.
Yeah, or insurance men, right? Yeah, not all insurance people are good people. Most of them are. 98.9% of them are. So, but with that being said, I was completely against that bill the way it was written before. And since then, that language has been taken out, so there is no protective status. But my issue is this. At what point do we decide for our children which laws are going to be followed and which ones are not? By the sheer fact that you are here illegally, you are a felon. It's a felony to come into this country without proper documentation, right? So they are a felon. So at what point do we say, well, we're going to prosecute these felonies, but not these felonies? We're going to allow these felons, but not these felons. That's a slippery slope.
I mean, just under that, I would caution, not caution. I'd point out that felons do have driver's license.
I understand that, but they also issue warrants as well.
Yeah.
My whole thing is this. I get it that felons have driver's licenses. I totally get that. But the fact that they are essentially being rewarded for being here illegally, how could you look at that as not being a reward?
I mean, when framed that way, yeah, I can see that. The way the bill is written, though, it doesn't say if you're here illegally, you can obtain a license. It's set up in a way that if you are not a resident of if you're not a U.S. citizen, here's a way you can get a permit, or not a permit, a license to drive.
Right.
That's how the language of the bill actually is set up. So I will concede that the people who are pushing for it were using illegal immigrants as an example and a reason as to why they're passing the bill. So,
of course, that's the reason.
Well, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying the bill doesn't say you have to be an illegal alien to obtain this permit, or to obtain this permit to drive, this license to drive.
When my in-laws came over here to visit from the foreign country that they were living in, residing in, they could bring their license from their home country, and they could drive here, right? So let's not act like this is being done for people who are coming here legally, who want to be able to drive in the United States. Those people had driver's licenses in the country before they came here. They can use that driver's license and drive here. In most,
I'm not denying that or saying that doesn't happen. I'm just saying that the bill's language doesn't say that.
I understand that's not what the bill's, but they're unintended consequences of the bill, though, right?
Well, I would say they're intended consequences.
Thank you.
Well, I agree with you.
So, I mean,
I'm just, this kind of comes back to our last chat, right? Where you're like, what I like about you, Soder, is that you try to not be racist about your argument, right?
You try so hard.
I try so hard.
Yeah.
Jokes are a different story, but the way the bill was pushed was for illegal immigrants to be able to get licenses.
Sure.
And my bigger beef with it is that the faction that was against it, they seemed more concerned about that and not how they could but they could use this bill as an opportunity to get something that they want. Like it seemed like they were tripping over themselves to appear racist in the social media, when they could have argued it differently or used it as an opportunity to push for voter ID.
Sure. Sure.
Which maybe could have killed the bill. I'm
sure.
If the people who were against it were able to get in there and amend or get in there somehow, or put another bill forward, say, hey, you guys are pushing for this driver's license thing, so our quid pro quo, our how we are doing politics in the background is we're going to introduce this bill which requires voter ID. Well, now you have, do they really want to do this driver's license thing or not? And
perhaps. So I don't mean to sound like a total boomer here, right? It's not what my intention is. But at the same time, I must go back to it. We must be very careful when we start setting precedents. of which laws we are going to follow and not follow, allow to be broken, not allowed to be broken, and even reward people for breaking them. Right? I mean, we're dealing with some issues in this country where if you're the right skin color, you can get away with certain things that you couldn't get away with.
Not touching it.
I'm not asking you to touch it. I'm just being honest. If you are the right skin tone, you can get away with saying and doing certain things you couldn't get away with saying and doing if you were of the wrong skin tone or a different skin tone. Right? I mean, I think we could all agree.
I can think of an example of one that might have been the case.
Jussie Smollett?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're thinking about a similar one, right? But even think about Cardi B, right?
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Okay. So,
but
seriously.
You forget, no one cares about men. So.
Well, okay. Okay. Well, so if you are one of the wrong 5 or 10 or 12 or 13 genders, right? you can get away with certain things. So no, just think about it this way: if what she did, okay. So Cardi B, just so for those of you guys who aren't aware, she was accused of. I'm sorry.
She pulled a Cosby.
Let me back up. She bragged about drugging Wall Street men. She was a dancer in a
adult establishment.
There you go, a gentleman's club.
Yeah, there we go.
And so she would take them back for dances after she had drugged them. She would, in some cases, sodomize them and rob them.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and rob them. Okay, and then sometimes bring in what's the transgender people?
Got it right.
Is that did I say that correctly?
I try not to go down that road.
Well, I mean, so she would sometimes bring people in. I mean, but it totally violate these guys' human rights, I would say. Now, essentially, what was different from what she did and what Bill Cosby did? I'm not saying either one of them was right. Both of them should be under the prison if they did what indeed been said that they've done. The difference is that Bill Cosby was accused of these things. She admitted to these things and even bragged about them. So how repentant is she for her actions?
Doesn't appear like a lot.
Yeah, not at all, in my opinion. So the issue that we have is that once again we see certain laws applying to certain people as long as they fit a certain demographic.
Yeah, I was going back to my man.
Oh, go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt.
That's what I was laughing at and trying to figure out how to work that in. Like, because he's a man, so patriarchy.
Well, he was a man, so that's 2 strikes against him as it stands because he's a man. So I totally understand. And Sonia says, but she was honest. Yes, she was. She was honest. So
at least she didn't contradict her deposition like Cosby did.
But I don't think anyone, being completely objective, would say if Cosby would have just come out and said what he had done, we would have forgiven him.
Maybe not. I'd lean towards not.
Not at all.
But admitting to crimes is usually a bad idea.
Well, but she did. She admits to them, and the story is dying, so much so that some of the more egregious pieces of the story you haven't even heard of yet.
I mean, there's more egregious things than what you told me?
Well, what I just told you, you weren't aware of it.
Oh, no. I haven't really followed it either.
So, but my issue is that we're traveling down a very dark and dirty road where we choose when we are not going to hold people accountable based on, number 1, their gender, number 2, their race or sexual orientation. It's a very dangerous road to go down, but we see it happening.
Or legal status.
or legal status. There you go. So, I mean, how far can we take that? Are we going to have a separate set of rules for one group of people and a separate set of rules for the other?
Um, I'm going to go down another. I'm going to go down a gun road here because I think it's sort of applicable in that immigration is a federal thing, federal level thing, and not states aren't necessarily they don't necessarily need to enforce federal law,
Okay.
right? Like the cops, your hometown can't deport someone. That's for the federal agencies to do. Yes, Jay Venom, you're right. We are boomers with audio, and we're trying to figure it out. Uh, so, so with that in mind, a number of years ago, Kansas passed a Second Amendment protection law that said that the federal government's laws on guns don't apply here. So anything that has a mark that says "Made in Kansas" and was bought and sold within the state limits, you could ignore federal law when it came to firearms. So, forget how much longer after the law passed, some guy decided, hey, you know what would be a great idea, would be a great business model, is if I made and sold silencers. And for those of you who, I doubt people who are in the chat or watching this don't know about it, but silencers are an NFA item. You need to pay a $200 stamp tax on it. You have to get approval for that stamp, and then you can actually take possession of the silencer. And the waiting list, last I knew, was at least 6 months. It's a long, expensive process, and a lot of people spend even more money to set up gun trusts so that they can pass these items on to their children or much more easily sell them to someone else. They get tired of it or don't want it. So this guy thought, hey, you know what? That's a $200, instantly a $200 discount on my items, and I'm going to be able to sell a ton of these. So he started making them and selling them, and guess what happened? The ATF came in and went, hey, yeah, buddy, you're breaking a ton of federal laws right now. We're going to cart you off to jail. And Kansas went, well, you know, guy, they're right. You are breaking federal law. And the whole time he was like, I'm following the state law. What's going on here? So if I remember right, his case is recently concluded, and now he's a federal felon because of it. So anyway,
if you were president, he'd be allowed to own guns, so that'd be all right.
If I were president, I would be abolishing the ATF the day after I'm sworn in. So, or not abolishing it, I'd be gutting it utterly. You know, one man, and he's locked in a 10 by 10 room all day. He can never leave. I'm going to give him so much work, he can never leave his office to go out and actually do things. So anyway, my point in telling the story is that Minnesota doesn't necessarily enforce federal laws, and we can ignore them. And I would think we would agree that Kansas doesn't need or was doing the right thing in passing that law in their state to allow anyone to be able to create firearms and sell them as long as they had made in Kansas in them. And there might be nuances to that law. I don't know. But, well, thank you, Bazunga. I don't know how to say it. I was never good at English, so I don't know how to say your name. So thank you for that vote. And like last time, I'll probably never run for president because people will want to kill me all the time. All right, so what was my point again? It was about federal law and stuff like that. So we would say that would be a good. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but my assumption would be that would be a step in the right direction in terms of firearm laws in the United States, right?
Sure.
So how can we or under what circumstance are we going to not apply that kind of thinking in other areas like immigration and or in specifically in this driver's license thing? And that's where that's one of the reasons I'm kind of on the fence about it, because I think states have a lot of rights and abilities.
A lot of those, okay, so I get it, and I'm a constitutionalist. At least I think I am. I try to be, and I'm a firm believer in our constitutional republic. My issue with your statements, though, are that when the framers constructed our government, right? I don't think that they were ever intending on us having the welfare programs in place.
Oh, I agree. I agree.
And so if we did not have those social welfare programs, and California wanted to open their borders for all immigrants to come in and have status there, then by all means, as long as you're going to stay in California or stay in Arizona or New Mexico, that's none of our business. Right?
Well, yeah, they would only be getting benefits from California.
They would only be getting whatever benefits that being a resident of California would give them, they would have, right? But we don't live under those laws and rules and regulations, right? We do have a welfare state. And because of that, because we have a feckless judicial, executive branch in a lot of ways.
Legislative, judicial.
Yeah, all of them. Yeah, I was like, legislative, yeah, executive, yeah.
The only one you can really count on. The only one you can really count on is the bureaucracy to not be feckless.
Oh yeah, no, they're not. They're not at all. So okay, so because we have those issues, then we have to stand strong at the federal level because we have to protect our tax dollars. When I was in college, I actually wrote a paper, and I know I'm going to tick some people off, but my argument was that if a person did not pay taxes, federal and state, if so, they do not pay taxes, that they should not be allowed to vote. And people thought that was absolutely a terrible statement to make.
Oh, that's similar to me. I think only landowners should vote.
Well, I'm not.
Similar.
It's not similar at all. It's not similar at all. But okay, similar to like growing up in church, right? Like once you became 16 and you were a tithing member of that church, you could vote for everything from the color of carpets to who the new pastor of the church was going to be, right?
Not the one I attend, but
okay.
You
probably go to.
I grew up in a Baptist church, and we have rules.
Okay, so, but the bottom
line.
But
yours might have been. I don't know if you went to a Baptist church as a child, but those could have been the rules. If you're paying tithes, then you can vote.
I grew up in a very, very conservative Baptist church. Yes. Okay. But my thing is this: if you are not contributing to the rolls, right, and you are not putting money in the treasury, then you should not have the right to vote on how those dollars are spent. Right? If you're not contributing to the treasury, then why should you have the right to vote on how those dollars should be spent?
So you would be against the sales tax?
Actually, I would be totally for a VAT tax or a flat tax. I mean, I would love the idea of something like that and do away with income tax. I think income tax is theft, but that's my own personal feeling.
That's the beauty of only property owners can vote.
I'm not going down that road, man.
Don't have to have the income tax. And sales tax is a tricky one for me because, like you're saying, and a lawyer friend of mine had a really good point about sales taxes in that the state is an arbiter in contract disputes or fraud. So sales tax is the payment of that protection.
Okay.
So, or that's kind of the idea behind it, is like the state is keeping a registry of businesses, so you can easily find the officers and the executives to sue if you need to. They're not controlling, or they're contributing to the market they're in a way they're building the place where everybody meets.
Okay.
And that's their fee for doing business there, is
Okay.
the sales tax. So, but when you're going, well, if you're not contributing to the coffers of the state, well, if there's sales tax, everyone who buys anything contributing to the coffers of the
Sure.
state. So,
I'd be willing to pay a higher sales tax and do away with the income tax.
oh gosh, I think the
Yeah.
state would have way more money in their hands
Absolutely.
if we had no income tax. It was only sales, because every transaction, or most transactions, I know there's some business to business ones
Sure.
that can go untaxed.
I agree with that. I mean, but one of the interesting points that people brought up here in talking about our earlier discussion about states being allowed to, in an absence of government funded welfare states, okay, or government funded programs, in the absence of those things, that people should be allowed to, that we would be okay with people being confined to those areas, right? So
Well, they would naturally go, like if California decided everybody gets $1,000 a month, the people who wanted to be there and obtain that would naturally just stay in California, or naturally go to California for that.
sure, but if they knew that if they were apprehended in Utah, that they were going to be deported, well, then you would obviously stay where you felt safe, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, don't really do that now, but
I understand that, but that's because they can get similar benefits in other places. I'm saying if those benefits were confined to the state that was the sanctuary state, right, then people would more than likely stay in those states. But it kind of brings us up to this week's topic of comedy with your favorite president, Donald J. Trump, right? And him essentially floating the idea that that the influx of people that are coming to the border, that we should let them in, as the chants have been.
I'm not sure that's exactly what he meant, but
so what's your take on it?
well, my take on it, it's hilarious. It's been fun watching certain DFL, or not DFL, Democratic pundits, politicians, basically go, whoa, wait a minute. How can you be using these people in your political theater? Oh, and like, well, I've been doing the last, decades.
Right.
What are you talking about? Like, you said we should be welcoming them. He's saying we're just going to drop them off at your doorstep.
Right.
Instead of just dropping them off wherever it is that we were. Gosh, I hope when I heard the story, I started trying to figure out, okay, why haven't they done this, right? Like, what legal reasons would there be to not ship someone who was caught on the Rio Grande over to San Francisco, right? And release them there.
Okay.
And I haven't found any reason for it other than someone, I forget what his name was, saying that, well, that it would be a violation of the Hatch Act, which is something to do with using government resources for campaigning.
That's a
It's
stretch.
kind of, yeah,
That's a stretch.
it's, I mean, if that's the case, then, well, all government agencies should just die because, I mean, that's what your campaign promises are about, right? Like, if you're
Well,
saying that, hey, we should fund the ATF or the FBI or whatever to cut down on crime.
did you not see what they just did to Candace Owens? I mean,
I did not watch that. I haven't followed up. I
they
haven't been
brought
following
her.
her story.
They brought her into the um, Senate House.
Let's just say
House.
congressional. And
Into a congressional committee, right? And the Democrats essentially railroaded her, and the Republicans essentially
white knighted.
pretty much. I mean, pretty much. So my issue with it is they do that already. I mean, how many times do they use? Look at the entire Kavanaugh hearing. How is that not? I mean, everyone who gave their little speech is now running for the Democratic seat or the nomination for president, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so those were taxpayer dollars being used to fund that entire.
Yeah, it seemed a stretch, right? Like, well, then you can't make any campaign promises,
Right.
right? Or campaign on anything that you've done while you're in office.
Sure.
And then there was one other article I found where some Democratic guy, I think he was Congress, just said it was illegal.
Right.
He didn't. The article didn't have any of the reasoning. It might have been the Hatch Act.
It was illegal
guy.
because he said it was illegal.
Yeah,
Right.
that was the gist of the article. Was
Right.
this guy said it's illegal? Well, okay, it's illegal for him to do. So I'm hoping if he's gonna do it, that the only reason they haven't is just the cost. Like just the fact that he said it kind of makes me think that there's very little in terms of like catch and release regulations. Like, oh, if we catch him on the southern tip of Texas, we have to release him around the southern tip of Texas.
Right.
Kind of like World War II when they captured guys in Germany. They had to keep them in the same climate that they were captured in, or stuff like that. But that would be my guess, is that it's more of a cost-based thing than a regulation type thing. But I haven't researched it too much, and no one has really said anything about why it's illegal.
Have you
for him
heard
to do.
from Cher?
Oh yeah, I saw that she had posted something a while back about how should just let everyone in, and then Trump said this, and it was immediately reversal.
I'm amazed at how. I mean, he is the grandfather troll.
Yeah,
I mean, and I say that as respectfully as I possibly can, but I'm impressed by his level of trollhood, right? So Cher is, she came out and talked about how President Trump should not be promoting walls, he should be building bridges, and how everyone should be allowed to come in, and all of that. And then she puts out a statement saying, I understand helping struggling immigrants, but my city, Los Angeles, isn't taking care of its own. What about the 50,000 plus citizens who live on the streets, people who live below poverty line and hungry? If my state can't take care of its own, many who are vets, how can it take care of more?
Yeah, that sounds like some GOP.
That sounds extremely conservative.
Have been memeing the last, I don't know, 10 years?
But if Trump had written this, he would be considered a white nationalist, and he would be considered extremely racist for saying it, right?
Or other people.
Or other people, right? But I'm thinking, wow, this sounds like Ronald Reagan
Sounds like
himself.
she's our gal. Cher 2020.
Maybe Trump should ditch Mike Pence and pick up Cher as his running mate. So I just think it's hilarious that we've been saying this for years, that we need to take care of Americans first. I mean, that sounds like America First policy.
That sounds like America First to me.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? Good for her.
Who knew that Cher was a white supremacist?
Who knew? Who knew? Yeah, it's Yeah, we'll definitely share for president. I got you, babe.
All right, where we were going with that?
um,
Can't remember anymore.
essentially, we were talking about that particular. We were talking about that particular. Um,
Oh, right.
the
His
states
tweet,
being allowed to bring in other people. Yeah,
or
and
him shipping them to sanctuary cities,
them
or
being limited
states.
to sanctuary states or sanctuary cities. I think that that's the only proper way to handle that. The problem is that we see an agenda, a greater agenda, right? Because not only are we seeing that, not only are we seeing that they are pushing this agenda to bring more and more people in, who are unfortunately lower income, lower skilled laborers. Um, Not only are they looking to bring in more of those people, but the bigger issue in my mind is that they're looking to bring these people in while simultaneously looking to cut away at the electoral college, right? I mean, they're looking to get rid of that and go to a popular vote. Well, if you're going to bring in people who are going to have historically voted one way, right? They've historically voted blue, okay, in a far and away large majority, right? Why wouldn't you want to go away from the electoral college? It almost
Well,
seems systematic.
well, you always push for something that you're going to benefit from, right?
Sure, sure. But you would think that the American people would be able to see through it, right? I mean, the agenda is pretty clear here. I mean, if you're looking to bring in more people who vote historically for you, you can't tell me that, and I believe this wholeheartedly. You can't tell me that if 90% of the people who were going to be coming in were going to vote Republican, that the Democrats would be pushing so hard for those people to be brought
No,
in.
I don't think they would.
If it was even 50-50, they wouldn't be pushing to bring them in.
I'm not a math, but I could see that maybe.
If it were 50-50?
50-50 maybe.
Well,
Maybe.
the benefit for them is that it isn't. Historically,
I think it would depend upon other factors, like where they would congregate.
The interesting part about it is Trump is currently polling at about 50% approval rating with the Latino vote in America right now. I posted on Twitter the other day, but if Trump gets 50% of the Latino vote in 2020, the Democrats will build the wall themselves. I guarantee you.
Well, they seem to build them quite a bit around their houses, so they have a lot of practice.
So final word. Where are you at with this whole thing? I mean, we've had a lot of discussions.
With
as
the
far
electoral
as,
college.
well, electoral college. Yeah, I mean, where do you stand on that, and what is your concern with it? Or do you have any concerns with it?
The electoral college, my concerns are if it goes away, more specifically.
Okay.
I think that the system that got set up in the first place was very robust and well balanced. I think the changes that we've done in the meantime, like senators being elected by popular vote states instead of appointed by the state's legislative bodies, has screwed around with the balances that were in place at the beginning. And even to a degree, presidential term limit. Because if someone is doing a good job, they're going to get voted in again and again and again. Like the idea that they are reflective of the people is why that was allowed to happen in the first place.
Sure.
And it wasn't Washington. The precedent Washington set, the precedents that President Washington set of 2 term limits wasn't so, I don't think it was so much a statement of this is how the law should be. It was more of a statement of here's how we should view our government, in that even the people who are in charge need to understand their limits. Not that someone who's popular, or I shouldn't popular, but who's doing a good job and the people are happy with them shouldn't, be in for life, but that he wanted people to think of the government as a transient thing that should just stay out of their lives. And to put in restrictions like on term limits is, while some people would say, well, that's going to help government be smaller because we won't have these lifelong senators or House of Representative members at the federal level or state or at state level. It's more government. It's ironically more government, right? It's more laws. It's more regulations. So come back to the Electoral College, that being part of the balance of the population could get it wrong. Like if we had the system that we did at the beginning where the Electoral College votes, while they would probably reflect the people who voted in their state, they could vote another way. They weren't necessarily bound that vote. Trump might not have been president. That's to me the funniest part of these progressive ideas, that more people, or that these checks and balances that we have are outmoded, they're outdated.
Right.
That led to Trump. Like if we had an electoral college where the members could vote however they wanted, they could have voted for someone else. They could have all decided, you know what, Trump, even though he won the votes of all these states that we're representative of, we don't think he'd be a great president. Therefore, we're voting for whoever they might have thought would be a better choice. And we wouldn't have had Trump as president.
Right.
But because progressives thought, we need to bind our delegates to the vote of the population of our state or individual sectors of it, districts, that led to Trump. And the idea that the Electoral College should be gone away with because we got Trump, while in the short run I think it might be beneficial to the Democrats, it might not be in the long term for that reason. Because Trump won because he campaigned in the right states and the people who voted for him were in the right place. But after a while, that might not be the case anymore for the entire country.
My concern is that
for Lexit or Lexit or what have you.
My concern is that certain pockets of people historically have settled in certain areas because of either ideological similarities, religious similarities. I mean, a great number of reasons. Language benefits. But communities have been formed over the years or over the centuries around a greater a greater mode of ideas, right? Something greater than just people, right? People have gathered around something, right? And the issue that I have is that when you get to some of these major metropolitan areas like Los Angeles, Chicago, and Phoenix, and New York, Atlanta, right? You find that Minneapolis, even, a lot of the people in those areas have views that might not necessarily be indicative of the views of the people that live on the outskirts of those towns and those counties, right? The views of the people of the vast majority of people in Minneapolis versus the views of the vast majority of people in the rest of the state of Minnesota are very different, right? What the Electoral College does is it allows each state, no matter how small, to have some voice, as opposed to be brutally honest, if my fear is that if we went away from and went to a popular vote, went away from an electoral college, there'd be no reason for those of us in Minnesota to even bother casting a vote.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I'm just ray of hope, if you will, if it were to happen, that the unintended consequences of these progressive ideas can backfire.
I'm sure, but I think the most important thing that we can do is to fight it.
Oh yeah,
changing
then again,
it all.
I completely agree. The electoral college should stay, because the president is representative of the states, not necessarily the people.
Right.
Like he's representative of the union,
Right.
which includes the states, and it represents the states, not so much the people in the states.
Sure. Sure.
There can be an imbalance in that, and just because Montana, so few people in it, doesn't make it any less important than California or
Florida.
Texas.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Well,
At least we ended on an agreement.
We did.
Right?
We ended on an agreement. I still don't believe that felons should have guns, but you know
Black
what?
and white at the beginning, and now we're just gray.
Now we're just gray.
Now we're NPCs.
Wow. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for those of you guys that stuck it out with us and
Through all our boomer troubles.
and all of our boomer troubles, and also for those of you that got involved in the chat as well. Guys, just want to welcome you to this this I don't want to call it podcast live stream. We're going to be doing a lot more of this. Our show is called Out of the Darkness, so make sure you subscribe and keep checking back with us, because sometimes I've been told that people aren't necessarily made aware when a new video is posted. So continue to check back with us, guys. For those of you guys, today is Monday. Have a wonderful week, and God bless. And we'll look forward to seeing you later on. We should hopefully see you a couple more times this week with some more content. So thank you, and we will see you soon. Have a blessed night.
Good night.